Hello, welcome back to From Soft Serve. Today I wanted to do another comparison between Dark Souls Re-Remastered, the mod I'm working on for Dark Souls Remastered. Basically to restore the Prepare to Die edition in a playable format, but also upscaled, and to use the benefits of Dark Souls Remastered, which is more performance. Generally, that was one of the big upgrades, and I can use normal maps on everything, and certainly it's mostly just that it runs better. That's the biggest difference. And I wanted to do one of those comparisons where I do like a frame by frame, and then I'll load up the unmodded Dark Souls Remastered. And through the magic of editing, we'll see the difference. Because for me, I haven't done a lot of these comparisons myself, so like privately. So I actually really like doing them, so I can go, okay, maybe mine looks worse here. Okay, I'll fix that. And I'd like to do comparisons to actually the Prepare to Die edition as well. It's a little more difficult because it doesn't use DSR Gadget, that program that you can set the camera angle and do that. But yeah, let's start here, and then I'm going to load it up in the unmodded Dark Souls Remastered. And we're back. I think the thing I immediately notice is, I think the baked shadows versus the dynamic shadows, because I stripped out most of the baked lighting. And I do think this comes off far more visible, and I need to alter the shadow density, because I actually raised the shadow density just a bit yesterday, and it's not in the current version of the mod, so I need to probably lessen that. But that's fair. I can easily do that. You can also see that really low resolution house over there. And then like you'll notice in the default version, they don't use depth of field that much at all. But I actually think it looks pretty good overall. And then the armor is the unupscaled version. Honestly, it looks pretty good though, even the default version, with no texture upscaling. Okay, well, that's why we do this, so I can go, okay, interesting. Because otherwise I lose track of what's good and what's not. Yeah, you'll notice in the unmodded version, this area is, they forced it to be dark, even though there is light that would actually hit it. They just had a light map that darkened the entire thing. And so obviously my mod makes this a lot brighter. I do think it would be smart for me I might actually apply a slight light map to it, basically just as a color filter. Because I do think it's a bit bright in my mod. I think the contrast, admittedly, Dark Souls Remastered is more washed out just by design. So I still want to make sure that I'm going to the Prepare to Die edition. That's still my goal. Yeah, let's go up here. Let's go to Taurus Demon. And because I'll still say I don't think that Dark Souls Remastered is a bad looking version of the game. I think it's fine. I just think it became a little too washed out versus what the Prepare to Die edition was doing, essentially. Yeah, let's get this one. This is the magic of editing. We'll go back to my Dark Souls Re-Remastered, and we're back. And I think, yeah, the big difference you see is, of course, the more accurate shadow casting from the actual bridge area here. And I think this might be too bright. Just maybe. Obviously see the increased depth of field and, better like actual lighting on the character itself. And yeah, I don't hate the way that Remastered looked there. Of course, I have to mention I don't hate how Remastered looks overall. I just think it's less accurate to the Prepare to Die edition. I think they made it more bleak looking, which makes sense with the fire fading and whatnot. So I actually don't think like that's a crazy choice, and they were basing it on, very likely, on Dark Souls 3, since Dark Souls 3 had come out in 2018 or 2016, and Dark Souls Remastered came out in 2020 or 2018. My God, I can't get dates right. And so, what version of the game would you base your remaster of an earlier version on? Well, obviously you would base it on Dark Souls 3, right? Because that's where the game ended up, going towards. So, or the series. So that makes total sense to me. Yeah, let's see if we can get a nice close-up with Solaire. Okay, so let's see how this looks in the unmodded version. Yeah, big difference here is definitely the way the characters are lit. I think is a lot better, or a lot more visible, with less like visual noise. So this is important. Yeah, I need to definitely work on this, because there's definitely way more noise and like visual. I don't know. I would just call it visual noise in my version. And I think I need to look. I'm going to look into basically how the characters are lit. I need to double check the lighting ID that they were using versus the environment, because normally they'll use two different ones, and they'll use the collision to alter the lighting of the characters. But yeah, I actually think Solaire looks really good here overall. Of course, these are the original textures for Dark Souls Remastered and not the Prepare to Die ones. But the way that he's lit here is actually really, really pretty nice. Yeah, I'll have to look into this. I need to double check. Although you'll see in unmodded Dark Souls Remastered, they have like an issue over here where you'll notice the fog settings are incorrect for these two different map pieces, because you can see that one looks washed out and it kind of stands out on its own when that one is set to a different fog ID. But that is just a bug that I think has been in the game since the PS3 version. But my mod does fix that. But yeah, I have to say, I actually overall like this. I think there's more visual coherency in this unmodded game. And I think I'm going to try to learn from this for sure, because I think there's definitely something to learn here. Like this stone texture obviously is unupscaled versus mine, but I think the visibility of this is much better. Mine has a lot more like specularity going into it, so I need to look at the actual specular map that I'm using to make sure I didn't do any sort of specular map changes, because I think it comes off a little too like shimmery. And this has a nice, honestly, has a nice look to it. I think it's still a little washed out, but it's not bad. I think it actually looks quite good overall. Okay. So I got to learn from that. This is something I actually did in Anor Londo, where in Anor Londo, whenever I stripped out the baked lighting, what you do is, instead of making it white, basically that's how you strip out the baked lighting in this game. You change the light map texture to white, and you save it as uncompressed DDS. However, the better way that I've found in some of the areas, like Anor Londo, for instance, was really weird when I did that. The map pieces were too bright. And so I actually altered the color and took a color from the light map originally, and then, did the fill option. And then you save that as a light map. And it basically just tone maps the textures for that map piece that used that light map. And I think I need that for Undead Burg. I think mine's a little too bright because I'm using the white textures. So this is a good reminder of that. I need to look into that, because I think currently the bright regions are a little too in your face. And obviously you can do param editing, but this honestly looks really quite good. I like the visibility of this, and it's not too much in your face. And I think my version of the mod, or my version of the game, is a bit too much specularity and brightness, and I think it's losing some of the subtlety. So it's always really good that I make these videos. I want to do more of these comparisons because I need to basically look at it directly and go, I don't like that about my mod. I need to change that. Because yeah, I think mine's a little too bright in the bright regions. So I'm going to look at the light maps for that. Let's see, is there another? Oh yeah, let's go down to the bridge actually, and we'll have a look at the dragon, and maybe head on, and we'll do a comparison there because I think my bridge is too bright. So usually what you can do is instead of using white for your light map texture, just a blank white texture, you can use like an off gray texture, and it can actually look a lot better. And so I'm going to look into that. Okay, so let's go right here. Maybe I'll put on a different set of armor. Let's see. I did upscale the brigand set. Although, what's the best one to use? The golem, maybe? Yeah, sorry for my D-pad again. The loudest D-pad this side of the Mississippi. Just absolutely ridiculous on Xbox controllers. All right. Now let's save this into DSR Gadgets. And let's pop into the modded version of the game. Okay, so in my version, yeah, you can see that the golem armor changes quite a bit as I'm using the prepare to die textures. And I think my shadow density setting that I turned up to 100%, because it's from 0 to 100%. So I think I need to re-up that, or re-down that, if that makes sense. Probably down to 90 or 80%, because that'll change the actual like shadows and how dark they are. Because I do think you're losing a bit of the visibility of Undead Burg, a bit. And then you'll see the mountains up here change to the different coloring from what they are. Because it's weird, they're like totally green, and then when you're in Firelink Shrine, they're like totally the other color, like this one, more orangish. But yeah, you can see there's too much specularity going on this texture. And I think I know why that is that I need to separate the lighting IDs used for characters and the environment, which is normally how it is in the base game or unmodded game. I undid that because I wanted the characters to fit into the environment really well. The problem you have is that I'm learning, or I'm relearning, that I need to decouple that, because when you alter the specular and inv-diff levels to make the character bright enough and visible enough for the armor, it will make the environment too bright because they need to have separate specular settings. I'm definitely noticing that. So, okay. Duly noted. Although I don't think it's a bad version at all. I overall like the higher contrast of my version, as it's obviously closer to Prepare to Die, and obviously better textures, normal maps, all that. But just from a visual coherency standpoint, I do think I made it the shadows a little bit too dark. But that's not in the current version of the mod that's on Nexus. I just changed the shadow settings. Actually, yeah, let me change the shadow density settings just really quickly. Which actually, I guess I'll show you guys doing that really fast. So I do have open... wrong one. Aha. Okay. So yeah, this is actually the last thing I literally just changed before I went to bed. So let's go back down to 80% on the shadow density for Undead Burg. Let's do that. Let's do that. Okay, because I was upscaling more armor textures. So let's copy over our param. Okay. And let's go back in game. Let's quit out real quick. That way you can load the new param file. And fingers crossed, that should make a difference to how dark the shadowed regions are. Yeah, you can see now it's a little bit more visible, and the shadows here are definitely better. but I still need to decouple the specular levels, because this is the perfect example of just there's too much visual noise going on here to where I don't think it looks as pleasing as it could. I think it's a bit distracting. And it also could be that I'm using like parallax occlusion mapping and a better normal map, because I think the texture detail is there and I think that looks good, but I think the specular is going a little too crazy. And I know that that has to be related to the param settings that I'm using. So hopefully you enjoyed this little comparison. I think most of it was a little negative on my mod, but that's good. I don't want to shy away from that. And I always want to be clear-eyed of like, hey, I don't like that. Okay, I got to fix that. Because otherwise I don't think I'm really going to be able to improve my mod if I don't look at the things that I don't like. And I'm usually my harshest critic, right? So, yeah, but I'm realizing back and forth I need to alter, the specular brightness. And I'm going to look at the light maps too for Undead Burg, because that's a good point, because I had changed that for Anorlando and using slightly darker colored light maps that still have the lighting, the baked shadows removed. It still removes that and you still get the new dynamic shadows, but it basically is a very broad-based way of tone mapping the scene to look correct, and it can tamp down on some excessive brightness with how the game engine works. So I will say the Golem set is looking really great with the prepare to die textures. I think it really brings out the rusted nature of it. I just think it's a bit too bright with the way that my param settings are currently set up. So I'm going to look at that and then I'll report back. But thank you for watching this. Hopefully it was enjoyable, or at least interesting into the sort of nitty gritty of Dark Souls 1 modding. It's a lot of, there's like, if you want to change one specific thing about the scene, like scene brightness, or there's usually like 10 different ways to do it. So it's all about figuring out what's the best knob to turn to tweak this, but without screwing up all the other things. And that's honestly most of modding Dark Souls 1, is you're like, okay, let me do one thing. I don't want to fuck up everything else. And that's kind of the big game that you're playing. But yeah, so let me know what you think. Yeah, I'll see you on the next video.